Yes, Mr. Prince. I need to tell you that we have had to rearrange our program, and out of the kindness of my heart, I have agreed that you should testify until you finish, which may well be between now and 4 o'clock. That would give you an hour and a half. We have rearranged things. Mr. Manek, Hussein Manek, has agreed that we hear him on Thursday. So you have the floor. All of it to yourself.
Thank you very much, Advocate, and everyone. So I want to carry on by saying, at the conclusion of my my career with the Proteas, as we all know in life, one door closes and another one opens. So in 2011, I played my last match for the country. At the same time,
recording in progress.
A few months later, I was afforded the opportunity to be an overseas player for one of the counties in England, Lancashire County Cricket Club. And you know, maybe it's not a big deal for somebody who played for the country for 10 years, 66 test matches, 50-odd one-day internationals, 119 times I played for my country. So, you know, it was quite a significant amount of matches for me anyway, that I represented the country. But, you know, it was a massive, massive moment, and I don't think people can quite appreciate the significance. You know, here's a colored guy from Galvindale, as we say, you know, the hood in South Africa, in PE. And, you know, there's a county on the other side of the world who has asked me to come and be the overseas player, you know, basically to explain that to you guys. You know, you only get, as a county, you only get to have one person from overseas to kind of represent your county, as basically, if you like, the star man. And for once in my life, you know, people have recognized me for what I do as a person on the field. You know, recognize my performances, recognize that I'm a skilled guy at my craft, that they can entrust me with that responsibility, and hopefully I can pay them back with some performances. And I played for the county for about 6 years at the end of my, you know, after representing the country. And, you know, sadly, out of a 20-year playing career, that included some significant individual highlights, I would say. I mean, I scored a test match 100 at Lords, which is, you know, like quite a significant thing in cricket. You know, scored hundreds in Australia against some of the best bowlers the world has ever seen. So I've done some decent things in test match cricket. But this was very significant for me, that out of all the cricketers in the world that they could choose from, you know, they asked me to represent them. I'm talking about some of the best cricketers in the world that they had a choice of. You know, they chose me. And so, you know, maybe for the players and for Lancashire County Cricket Club, they don't recognize it as a big thing. For me, it was a major thing. You know, as once you being recognized for what you actually do and what you're able to deliver as a player. And I had some great years there. I made some great friends. We had some success on the field. We had some agony as well. But, you know, sadly, those were the best playing days of my career, considering that I played 10 years for my country. So anyway, after I retired in 2000 and...
Mr. Prince, before you go to the next point, you said when you started you were not from the rich family. You were from your working class family?
Yes, sir.
And you said you are a batsman. As I understand, the reason why in South Africa we don't have batsmen, black batsmen, it's because black people are not getting good nutrition, and therefore to be a batsman you require to be fed proper food. How did you make it?
To be honest, I'm not entirely sure about, the science behind it. I would imagine to be a bowler, you probably need better nutrition to be a bowler, especially a fast bowler, than to be a batsman. I'm not a scientist, so I can't explain that. How did I make it? I think my background, I think watching Kaya Majola, I think watching Mongezi Majola, I think realizing that when you go onto a pitch and you're standing 22 yards away from the bowler and you're the batsman, he has a weapon in his hand, he's got the ball in his hand, I've got my weapon in my hand, I've got my bat in my hand, and I've got to defend myself. And at the end of the day, it's his skill versus my skill. I have this philosophy that, I might have arrived at the ground with a taxi and you might have arrived at the ground in some luxury vehicle that you've been dropped off with, but ultimately, when it comes to the 22 yards, it's not about your mother or father's bank account versus my mother or father's bank account. It's about your skill versus my skill. And so it was war. Like I said, I played cricket like it was war. It's like, you got the ball, I got the bat, let's play. Maybe people, I would say there's a, stereotype that black people can't bat in this country. Well, what is, I'd like to ask, what is Viv Richards? What is Brian Lara? What is Sir Garfield Sobers? Yes, they're not South Africans, but they are black people. And so we believe in South Africa that black people can't bat. There was a ridiculous statement in an interview by one of our former national players as well. And again, I don't want to mention names. And I quote, "Cricket is inherently not their game," unquote. It's like, do we really believe these things? My belief about sport is that you have a talented child. Not everybody is talented in sport, but you have talented children with good hand-eye coordination, and they have good sporting genes. And if they spend enough time playing that sport, if they spend enough time being nurtured in that sport, whatever that sport is, they'll be able to play it at a high level, given the opportunity to play it, and given that they are being nurtured in it, educated in it, they'll be able to play the sport. We have a South African guy, I don't know his first name, it might be Gift, but his surname is Ngwepe, plays Major League Baseball in America. Anything is possible. If you're exposed at a young enough age, and you have good high-end coordination, you have sporting ability, and you are exposed to the sport, you can learn to play any game. That's my belief. So maybe I had a different belief. Maybe I wouldn't believe what people tell me. Maybe I wouldn't believe the stereotypical thinking that black people can't bat. And again, we've got a few more things to get through. I want to touch on all these things because I think it's important. I think what we teach the next generation is important. More so, I hear people saying that facilities, and people don't have, or black kids or colored people, townships don't have, enough coaching. You don't have enough people throwing balls at you, or whatever the case may be, because a coach's job supposedly is just throwing balls, and a batsman must just hit more and more balls. Yes, coaching is important, hitting more balls and practicing is important. But I firmly believe what we teach is most important. In the mind and in the heart, what we teach, what we believe, those things are most important. I will say again, I wasn't a great batsman, but I was decent. But there are thousands of kids in this country who had a lot more greener grass to play on, a lot more facilities, or better facilities, maybe better equipment, maybe better all the things that money can buy. But these are not the things that make you a sportsman. It's not the things that money can buy. It's you as a coach. You've got to invest the right things into people. You've got to highlight what they're capable of. Me, I was coaches, the perception throughout the years of playing cricket in South Africa, it was always, you can't do this, you can't do that. It's like people just wanted to believe they can't do this, they can't do that. And so you have a lifetime of having to prove yourself that you can do X, Y, and Z. Never ever was it like, oh, you're good at this, you're good at that. I've noticed that you can do X, Y, Z. This is how you plan, this is how you go forward, this is how you move forward. Guidance, actually showing people that you believe in them. I'm moving on to coaching. We've kind of moved ahead and gone on to coaching. And I have one or two things that I want to touch on coaching. And I've been criticized as a coach. I've been criticized. I've been told that I don't back, or I don't want to create opportunities for white players. I've been told I don't want to create opportunities for black African players. I've been told all these things. I've been in a disciplinary hearing for not selecting 3 black African players in a South African professional match, when the quota is 3 black African players. So now I know that in the aftermath of this, people are going to say, yeah, you want to preach this, you want to preach that, but actually you did this. You didn't select 3 black players when you were supposed to. Well, actually, the truth about that is, yes, I did that. And I will tell you and I will explain why I did that. Because I have certain beliefs about cricket. I have certain beliefs about what is the best way to teach people. And I have certain beliefs about South Africa and South African cricket. We're getting our transformation wrong at the moment. We're not getting it right. This is my beliefs. And the non-selection of a 3rd black player, I understood quite clearly the impact of that and what could be the backlash. I understood 100% that I could lose my job. But I'm prepared to lose my job to fight for what I believe is right. So I didn't lose my job, and I had to appear in front of a disciplinary hearing, a panel of people from Cricket South Africa. And I had to explain why I didn't have 3 black players in the team, or 3 black Africans in the team. Excuse me. And so I had to give my reasons. So basically, the situation was as such. I've explained the history of our country. In sport, everybody that is non-white in this country have suffered. Before unity in this country, nobody that was non-white was allowed to be a professional sportsman in cricket. Right? So whether you were black, African, colored, Indian, whatever you classify yourself as, you were denied opportunities. Everybody. When there was unity, we had, in our transformation system, we had X amount of spots for previously disadvantaged players, or basically all of those who were denied opportunities under apartheid rule. And that was any color. Then, as I explained, I played a few years in England. I came back, I was now a coach. And now there was a differentiation between black African and Indian and colored. So I went to a coaches conference and I said, Max Jordan was in the conference, and so was the CEO at the time, Tabang Moram. And I said, guys, been away out of the country, played mostly there. Some of the rules have changed. Can you explain to me, why do we have now, if everybody suffered under apartheid and nobody was allowed to be professionals, why do we now have a differentiation between Black African and colored, or colored and Indian? So obviously it was a difficult question, and I got an answer in a coaches conference where I think it was Max Jordan, who was heading up transformation for CSA, explained to me that under apartheid rule, per child, the average spend per day was 8 Rand for a white child. For a colored and Indian child, it was 1 Rand, and for a black child, it was 50 cents. So, of course, we know a little bit about the history, or some of you know a lot more about the history of our country than I do. Of course, I will be the first person to say that Black African people have had the worst living conditions in this country. And under apartheid rule, this was news to me, the 50 cents and the 1 Rand and the 1 Rand thing. So, like, I was perplexed. I left that meeting and I was like, so are you saying that colored people, Indian people had a better chance at cricket because they had, on average, 50 cents more per day to spend? Are we saying that colored and Indian parents were supposed to buy cricket equipment or pay for cricket coaching with 50 cents a day when there isn't food on the table? Is that what people were supposed to do? So, you know, at the end of the day, I still don't understand. Maybe I need to be educated a little bit more. I know I need to be educated a lot more, but if everybody suffered now, why are we differentiating? Why are we creating? For me, it was like creating more division between people, creating more animosity in the dressing room, to the point where I coached a team that had a colored player who was fairly dark-skinned player. In the Dolphins in Durban, there was a boy who grew up as an Indian boy all along, but now people wanted to change their identity. People didn't want to be who they were as people, because to get a game of cricket, it will be better if I'm Black African. To get selected into a team, it will be better if I'm Black African rather than being colored, because it is seen as like you have an advantage or you had an advantage in life. So again, I speak with empathy towards all the people that suffered in this country, and I know that colored people, Indian people had better living conditions. But professional cricket or any other sport playing opportunities, did we have that? No, we didn't. So why are we creating more animosity between people now? So anyway, I selected this team, 7 players of color, 5 colored players, 2 white players, and 2 Black African players, and 4 white players. So I appeared in front of the committee and I had to explain. And they said to me, why didn't you pick the 3rd Black African player? So I said,
Mr. Prince,
actually...
Mr. Prince, can you please...
Yes, ma'am.
Can you please repeat the composition of the team that you picked?
So the composition of the team was, there were 7 players of color, of which 5 was colored, 2 was Black African, and 4 were white. As far as I'm concerned, it's a transformed team. If you want to think of transformation as counting how many faces of certain colors, you know, when I started playing cricket teams were all white. This was a team that had 4 white players in it, and I felt it was a transformed team. Nonetheless, the point I made to the transformation or the disciplinary committee was, are you telling me, this was I think 2019, or might have been 2018, and in fact, the scorecard is there. The scorecard is there. Let's see if we can. This was a match between the Warriors and the Cobras. It's a 4-day match. It doesn't have any highlights on it. If you can track it, you'll be able to find it. So in the end, I had to select a player who was in the country at the time. The player's name is Matthew Kleinveld. In the country at the time, he was, I think, the 3rd highest run scorer in the country. Now, again, we're going back into history. Here's a guy who just scored the previous match, a career best, 175. He was the 3rd highest or 4th highest leading run scorer in the country at the time. And because we had some national players returning from India who was away on tour, I had some players returning from India, and they were automatic selections. And so if I had to stick to the 3 black African target, this guy would have lost his place in the team, Matthew Kleinveld. So I said to the committee, I said, you know what? I understand that I might lose my job. I understand 100% that that might be the case. But are you telling me in 2019 that Matthew Kleinveld, by the way, his father is Johnny Kleinveld. Johnny Kleinveld played for Western Province in apartheid days. I'm talking about non-white Western Province. Johnny Kleinveld, by all accounts, and the people that are respected in cricket, was good enough to play for his country. He was a big hitting, hard hitting batsman. And if I speak to the people who I respect in cricket, he was good enough to play for his country. Yet, at the time, Johnny Kleinveld wasn't white enough to get a game of professional cricket in this country. This was 30, 40 years ago. Now we're in 2019, and you're telling me that Matthew Kleinveld is now, his son, 30, 40 years later, is now not black enough to get a game of cricket in this country, when he just scored a career best 175, when he's the 5th highest run scorer in the country. So it might not be a big deal, you know. People might not think, who's this guy, Matthew Kleinveld, whatever. Matthew Kleinveld had waited 10 years for his opportunity to get a chance to become a regular player for Western Province or for the Cobras. His father was denied opportunities under apartheid rule. Are you now telling me that his father wasn't white enough and now he's not black enough to get a game of cricket? Is this the environment that we want to create in cricket? So I have quite a few things that I would like to challenge Cricket South Africa in moving forward in how we're going to transform the game. I'm a father. I'm a father of 3 sons, and they have dreams. And I go to school and I drop my sons off at school. Okay, they don't go to school now. When they were at school, they now do homeschooling, but when they were going to school, and they have friends at school that play cricket with them. And they have colored and white friends, and and I'm saying to myself, in cricket in this country, are we really going to have an environment where my son's friends who are 12 and 13 and 14 is not going to get a game of cricket because they are white, because they are colored, because they are Indian? Is that the future of our cricket? Is that what we want? Are we? So what I'm talking about this is, I'm talking about the dreams of young boys. They don't know politics. They don't understand the bigger world. They don't understand. But a young boy, just because he's a certain color, his dreams can be crushed because he's not the right skin color. So I want to appeal to Cricket South Africa. And I don't have all the answers. I don't have the answers. But we have to think of better ways to select cricket teams. From junior age groups right to the top. You know, and again, I will say, yeah, people will come and say, it's easy for you to say you were forced into the team because of quotas. Now, again, you want to deny opportunities for other people of color or black or whatever the case may be. I can again say, go to the records. There was 4 or 5 people that I couldn't take out of their position. but there was one more batting position in the South African team at number 6. And my job, regardless of my background, regardless of how much I had or did not have, my job was to make sure that I'm the best when it comes to the rest. When I'm talking about the rest, there were certain names that they were playing the game at a higher level than me. But when it came to the rest, and there was one position left, I had to make sure that my record is better than theirs. Because if it's not, people are going to say you were a quota player. That's why you were there. So I'm going to ask myself, what do we want to teach young black and colored and Indian non-white people of this country? Do we want to teach them that it's okay, you can be below what is regarded as the average, what is regarded as that's what you have to be or do to be in the team? You can be below that, but we'll create that opportunity for you. When I'm talking about below, I'm not talking about 1%, 2%. I'm not talking about that. Are we telling our young boys and girls in this country that you, as a black, Indian, or colored, can be better than white people? What are we educating? This is what you need to educate. Because let's be certain about one thing. The standard of the game of cricket, the standard, when I'm talking about the standard, what the world is playing cricket at, the level that they're playing cricket at, the standard, the absolute highest standard of the game is not set by white South Africans. Let's make no mistake about that. The standard is not set by white South Africans. The standard is set by the players from every country around the world that's playing the game at the highest level. That's the standard of the game. Your job as a player, whether you're white, black, colored, Indian, whatever race you associate with, your job as a player is to get as close to that standard as possible if you want to be selected. If you don't get to a certain level, you should not expect to be selected. You have to reach the level. Because if you don't, this is the thing. CSA, Cricket South Africa, might have a picture in their mind. They might have an idea of when the team looks like X. When I say X, it has so many white players, so many black players, so many colored players. Then we would feel we've got the perfect transformation mix. The problem with that is, if you continue to pick players who are performing week in, week out to a lower level as other players, but those other players cannot get in the team because they're not the right color, you are forever going to have a problem. You are forever going to have a problem because players, like I said, when I was young, the world around you starts educating you. Your eyes open up and you see, as a 17, 18, 19-year-old, why am I not playing? I'm doing better, not 1%, not 2%. There's sometimes 20, 30% differences, but the guy who's 20, 30% different, regardless of the color, he's not getting selected. So you might have this dream picture in your mind, the makeup of the team has got to be X. But you will forever have a problem when the people who you think should be in or must be in, they are not performing, or other people are performing 20, 30% better. Then now, we're saying to ourselves, we've got to be number 1, 2, and 3 in the world. For CSA to be financially viable, for us to be able to compete against the best teams in the world, for us to continue to pull in TV rights, we have to be number 1, 2, 3 in the world. The question I have is, if our game accepts a standard, I'm talking domestically, I'm not talking internationally, I'm talking domestically, if we accept a standard that would not be accepted in any other country in the world. So if we say, it's okay, you can play. Today, next week, the week after, you can play. It doesn't matter how you're performing, what your numbers are. If those things don't matter and we just accept any standard, How are we going to maintain number 1, 2, 3 in the world? How are we going to be a commercially viable team to play against where TV companies want to watch every ball that we play?
But Mr.
They're not going to be...
Mr. Prince, do you accept that if you systematically exclude black people, you will always have a white team? And therefore, if you want to transform, you have to transform from what is not right to what is right. And in that case, you cannot ignore the color issue when you have historically always had a white team. So if you say we want to transform this team, so you will be changing it from white to, so the color, you can't avoid it. But when you don't have capable black people, you create them. You don't go and take a black person next door simply because you are looking for a black color. You create a pool where black people who are skilled, many princes, who have been denied opportunity simply because they are black. And this should not be an exception that Prince plays for the Proteas. Now it is an exception for black people to play Proteas. And that, I think that is where the problem is. And you can't address it without looking at the color and say, where are the black people? We need to train them, we need to give them skills. Some have got skills, you are born with it. Some of them you have to enhance that skill. So I think when we talk about these things, we are not saying for a moment when we talk transformation that just go and take a black person because it's black.
Or you must have any number, or you must have any number of black.
Yes,
because
yes.
the quotas say you must have no less than 3 Africans.
Yeah.
It can't be based on principle. Yeah.
As I said, gentlemen, as I said, it's not an easy fix.
Yeah.
One thing that I believe that policymakers that sit high up in high positions, in offices, I don't think they appreciate the amount of abuse, mental, verbal abuse that players have to undertake when they're on the team, either by teammates or by opposition, even on international stage by foreign opposition, because in the outside world of cricket, every time a black, Indian, non-white player is selected for the Proteas, it's because of quota. It's not, you don't understand what that player has to deal with. The world, I want to say that, you don't want a player to have to suffer that, because I have suffered it. I know what it's like. I've had to deal with it. I've had to deal with so many players or so many people from around the world, from in my own country, from my teammates, saying to me that, we had a guy at Western Province when I was a young boy, 19, 20, at the end of the season. We had a disastrous season. For the first time, the first ever non-white coach was Vincent Barnes, who still works for Cricket South Africa today. And after a disastrous season, the player was quoted in the newspaper saying, "We can carry these quota players here, but we cannot be led by the blind. We can carry these quota players." Well, after the war, after 20 years of fighting the war, whose record is better than who now? So who was the quota player? The records are there, they speak for themselves. Who was the quota player? But just because you're black, just because you're not white, you are referred to as the quota player. When the war is over and the war is done, now the numbers are skewed. They don't look like that. But for 20 years, you have to deal with it. Isolated by yourself, you have to deal with it.
Can I just say the following? You know, all these things that we are saying, that they are saying about the black people who are included in the team, those things will be said by people who are anti-transformation because they don't want transformation and they see anything that seeks to change the status quo as a threat to their comfort, right? That's one. The second one is because there is this notion that competence goes with whiteness. So if you are black, you are incompetent, and until you prove yourself otherwise. You get what I'm saying? And again, that stereotypeness, it's people who are not for transformation.
So I got a question, and I don't want to interrupt you.
Yeah.
How do you shake off that stigma? As a player, if you're the player, how do you shake it off?
Over time, it's unfortunate.
You have to be better than them.
Yes.
That's the bottom line.
Yes.
You have to go out there and be better than them. This is the thing that we need to understand. If you don't go and prove yourself to be better than them, because remember what I said before, the standard of cricket is not set by white South Africans. We have to understand this. The standard of cricket is set by the game. Your job is to go and stay as close to that standard as possible. And yes, sometimes in our past, the standard of cricket in Test cricket was set by white South Africans. And fair play to them. They were the best players in the world. Jacques Kallis, A.B. de Villiers, Sean Pollard, whatever. But at some stage, the standard of cricket in the world was also set by black South Africans. And I'm talking about KG Rabada, I'm talking about Vernon Philander, I'm talking about Hashim Amla, I'm talking about Makaya Antini. So at different stages in our cricketing history, you will find that some of our players set the standard. When I say our players, I mean all South Africans, black and white. But the standard of the game is not set by white South Africans. Sometimes it will be an Indian person from India. Sometimes it will be an English person. Sometimes it will be an Australian person. Your job as a professional player is keep as close to the standard as possible, or don't expect to be selected. Because if we have the system that accepts below par performances, we are not going to be number 1, 2, 3 in the world. It cannot happen. We have to understand what is going to deliver those positions in world rankings. We have to be clear about that.
Mr. Prince, you didn't finish your story about was it a disciplinary hearing that you went into with Mr. Max Jordan after you had selected your team, which didn't comprise of 3 African blacks? What was the outcome? What was the outcome of that?
So the outcome was that I received a warning from Cricket South Africa, as well as our organization, Cobras, Western Cape Cricket, and I was told that it mustn't happen again. It should never happen again. So at this stage, I want to share what I believe is the way that you grow people. Before you do that,
Mr. Prince, I want to gain clarity on what's your position now, whether you appreciate the importance of having those 3 black Africans in the team, or I don't know, what did you take from that? What was the lesson that you learned after you received the warning?
And if I could add to that, do you have any record of that disciplinary hearing? because we would like to look at it to just get a sense of where the CSA was coming from, what your position was, and what the evidence was, and how they couched their decision making. So that
there is a record of that, Advocate. There is a record of that. I'm sure CSA will be able to bring that up. There was, at the time, communication between myself and Mr. Max Jordan, as well as Mr. Corey van Zyl. There was also at the coaches' conference prior to the start of that season, there was also a request from the coaches that the transformation selection that is applied at professional level, so at franchise level, would mimic that of the Proteas. So the Proteas have a target. It's not a quota, which means you have to endeavor to reach that target every game. However, it's not a quota, you don't have to reach it every game. But the average is taken over the course of the season, and as long as you meet the average over the course of the season, then it's fine. So the season, the coaches' conference prior to that season, this was a request from the coaches at franchise level as well. Up until the time of me selecting this team, no agreement, or there hadn't been an answer from Cricket South Africa. Prior to selecting the team, I also wrote to Mr. Corey van Zyl, who was acting, I think, at the time as the general manager of Cricket South Africa. So there's communication there with him, and there's communication with Max Jordan, and I'm sure they'll be able to pull up those files. So I want to carry on, and you will have in front of you as one of the documents a scorecard from a match in which I was the coach, Cobras versus the Knights, and in the lineup there are 4 Cobras people who are highlighted. So like I said, I have been accused of not wanting to select Black African people, or I'm against Black African people being selected. I like to point out a team comprising, in the top 5 batsmen in a South African franchise level professional match, something that I speak under correction, but I don't think you will ever see in any other scorecard ever in the history of South African cricket. 3 Black African names in the first 5 batsmen in the batting lineup. Further down the list, you will find the name of...
Where's that?
The second is the very first or third page.
There's your quotation on the Group Areas Act, and then 1, 2...
Fourth page.
It's Cape Cobras versus the Knights, and the names are underlined.
Cape Cobra's first innings. Aye.
First innings, Cape Cobras. And you have 4 Black African names on the team sheet, where only 3 is required. You have 3 batsmen in the top 5. Themba Bavuma, Simon Komari.
Just
Yes.
Can I continue?
okay. Yeah.
Themba Bavuma, Simon Komari, Aviwe Mgajima. 3 batsmen out of the top 5. In the history of cricket in this country, you have never seen that before. I'm telling you that. Never. The point I'm trying to make is, people say black people can't bat. Who entrusted them with the responsibility of batting in the top 5? Who entrusted that? The reason I can do that is because I know people's capability, and I know batting is not dependent on people's skin color. So out of the top 5 batsmen, there are 3 black Africans, and there's a further 4th person in the lineup further down the list as a bowler, when only 3 is required on the team sheet. So when people say you're not in favor of black African transformation, I don't think anybody has ever seen a scorecard like this in cricket in this country. It was only done with me as the coach because I have a different belief. Now, what I want to say is, in developing people, in developing young people, in developing young black African batsmen, and this is, at this stage, I want to criticize Cricket South Africa, because in the Proteas, we have filled our national team when it comes to T20 cricket at the end of the Test series, at the end of the 50 over series. Then we'll throw in 5 or 6 black African names in a T20 match so that we can fill the average for the season. So we are saying we are selecting black African people. Look, our averages are looking good. We are selecting black African people. My take on developing black people is you select them in positions of importance. You select them in positions of responsibility. You make them feel as if they are trusted by the hierarchy to deliver the results that the team requires. Because this is by no means a dead rubber match. This is a match where the points count. This is a match where, for Western Province or for the Cobras to qualify for the semi-finals or playoff matches, we have to win these fixtures. So you entrust them with responsibility. You don't put them at the end of a series when, oh, we have to balance the numbers now, so let's fill the team now with 5 or 6 black African people. That's why...
What would you say if, you know, there would be those who say, but what do you want now, Ntsebeza? Here is Bavuma, he is now captain of the Proteas. What's this transformation thing about? You know, these things take time. You know, what are you complaining about? You now have an inquiry, social justice and nation building, and you talk about transformation as though there is no transformation. Yes, Bavuma, she's now your captain. What do you want?
Of course we have to transform. I'm 100% with you. What I'm trying to say is that...
No. I'm simply saying, what would you say if there was an argument that came from those who feel that this entire SJN project is unnecessary because things work themselves out, you know, there's a plan and what have you. For instance, now we have a captain who's black, who's African.
I don't think it's a waste of time. Initially, when I didn't want to make my submission, when I heard about financial paybacks, etc., at that time I thought it was a waste of time, because there's no way you can pay people for loss of earnings. There's no way. It's not possible. And when I followed the hearings, when I followed the process, I then subsequently changed my mind, because I believe the things that I have experienced can assist CSA in creating a better cricketing environment in the country. There are certain things that policies though that need to be revisited. We have to move forward. We have to create opportunity. We have to change mindsets. My belief in transformation is not doing a head count when people walk onto the field. My belief in transformation is that every child, black, brown, Indian, white, have the same potential. Every child have the same potential. And whether that is cricket, whatever sport it is, people have the same potential. And at some stage, and I hope that it will arrive in my lifetime, at some stage, I want to work or I want to be part of a cricketing environment that does not discriminate against any boy or girl, regardless of that person's color. At some stage in my life, because I'm a father, because I'm a parent, you know, I don't look at my white players and think, you've had this privilege, you have had that privilege, so I will just leave you out, or you don't deserve to be selected. I mean, if we're doing that, are we really changing the country that we live in? If that's our take on what should happen going forward, that we just leave white people out because they were privileged all along, or they had money all along, or they had whatever they had all along. The country has got its problems. Like I said, I'm not a politician. I don't know how we're going to fix that. But in cricket, I would like to one day arrive at a point where no child is discriminated against because they're a particular skin color. That's, you know, I think if there's one thing that I wanted to say today, then maybe that's it.
Okay, continue.
I want to complete by just
before you complete, if transformation is exactly what you say, we operate from the level that we are all equal. But we know that that's not the case, right? That we are not all equal. There are people who start from the basement. There are those who start from the ground floor. There are those who start somewhere. So we are not equal. Why is it that this forum has not attracted even a single white player who would come here and talk about transformation? I'm asking this, I'm not expecting you to have an answer. I'm just asking for your views. Why is it that it's black people who come here and talk about their experiences, which leaves me with the impression that Cricket South Africa is for white people. So they've got nothing to talk about. They are fine with the status quo as it is now.
There's a lot. I'm going to attempt an answer. I certainly don't have the answer. I'm going to attempt an answer. But there's a lot that goes on in cricket that people that sit upstairs don't have an absolute clue about what's going on the ground. People don't have a clue about what's going on the ground. Are we really saying that if a person wants to change his identity, if a person wants to change and start regarding himself as a different race, is that really what we want in cricket? That he doesn't want to be who he was always growing up. He now wants to be something else or some other person or from a different culture that he knows nothing about. But to get a chance to play a match of cricket, that's what he wants to be. Is that a healthy environment? Do we talk about these things? We don't talk about these things. Cricket South Africa don't talk about this. That people want to change their identity. Surely this cannot be what we want for cricket in this country. It cannot be. So at some stage, you know, when we talk about when I came on here, I knew that I'm going to say things that's going to absolutely tug at people's heartstrings. But if you want to transform a sport, you cannot sit at the top and say, in this team, you will have X, Y, Z in terms of numbers. You are changing the face of that 11 people that walks onto the field. You're not transforming the sport, because as a policymaker, as a politician, as whoever who's making these calls, you're not getting your hands dirty. You're not going into the areas where cricket is not played and saying, on this piece of land, I want to create a cricket ground. And on this ground, I'm going to create this development program. And I'm going to get these people who are qualified coaches to teach this community how to play cricket. You're not doing that. If you want to transform the sport, get your hands dirty and go and do that. Because sitting at the top and making a policy where so many people of so many different race groups will play in a team, that's not transforming the sport. I want to say that people say the playing field is not level. So my take on a level playing field is that in our lifetime, we will not see it. I would argue to say that in other countries where people are all white, Australia, England, predominantly, not all white, predominantly, I would argue that in their countries, the playing field is not level. What I mean by that is some have more than others. In those countries where everybody is white, some have more than others financially, better living conditions, better opportunities, or whatever the case may be. Where the playing field has got to become level is that those in charge of selecting people, we have to see every person as equal. The white boy versus the black boy versus the Indian boy, we have to see human beings as equal. I think that is where we can level the playing fields. We have to unlearn the stereotypes that we have in this country about your capability based on your skin color. That's what we have to unlearn. That's where we have to transform. We have to transform what we think people are capable of because they are a certain skin color. That's where we have to transform. And in developing the game, in creating more black people to play the game, we have to get our hands dirty because that is transformation. Get down there, develop infrastructure, put programs in place, put coaches into those programs, and coach people to play the game, not to the South African white man standard. Coach people to play the game to the world standard. You have to keep up to the world standard. That, for me, is transformation. That is transforming the face of it.
Do you accept that the leveling of the playing field will take one, practically, to have facilities in the townships? You don't have
Absolutely.
to carry that bag and get it into a taxi and wait in that taxi for 45 minutes or 50 minutes, which is going to carry you to town, to Wanderers. Yes. And once you have
Absolutely.
those facilities, then you treat people, you take people, you treat them equally because they have equal training, equal opportunities. Now you can treat them equally.
In fact,
Absolutely.
even before you respond, but you have already done so. You know, Max, I never fail to remind myself of this. He brought us a photograph of a hub, sort of state-of-the-art hub. And he said it was standing there and it was being vandalized. And I put it to several people who appeared before us here. And their answer was pretty much the same. It does not assist anyone to put these sort of white elephants if there has been no consultation with the community which that white elephant is seeking to serve. Because perhaps people would have said, no, don't put it there, put it there. You know, if there had been a consultation and there had been an agreement and people are aligned with the policymakers' ideas, you need a hub here. Or people would have said, just put it in the middle of where there is equal access for Africans to come from there, colors to come from there, white people to come from there. Put it in a place where it's going to serve all of South Africans. And I see that you're not, because I was also going to ask you that. sometimes these facilities are simply put up there. I don't want to use the word for propaganda purposes, but they are put up there. And the fate that they come to is the one that hub that Max Jordan had showed us had suffered. Namely, people just didn't see it for what it was. That it was their thing, that it was intended to enhance the skills of those who it was seeking to serve. And obviously, because people didn't, they had not been consulted about what it was intended to achieve. So it seems to me, from what I hear from you, is that there must be an all-round, development to create the talent that is there, whether the person is black, white, yellow, green, or whatever. But I think the debate between you and my colleague here is where we know, precisely because of that Group Areas Act and all the other laws of the past, and which incidentally, unfortunately, even post-apartheid in our constitutional democracy, there has been nothing that has been done to address those imbalances of the past. And one asks the question, what is this project supposed to do? What is it going to do? Which, if we are going to make recommendations, one person asks, but are you going to be like the Nicholson Commission of Inquiry, which also inquired into cricket and all of that? Isn't this a waste of time? And it bothers us to have people having lost hope to that extent. But it is because of what they see. That there are just no opportunities now for, in particular, black people. Whether by black you mean the contingent of people who are not white, because the evidence is there. Well, I don't know whether you want to have a reaction to that kind of sermon.
Advocate, I have a lot of thoughts about sport in this country. I have a lot of thoughts. My children, they also play other sport. Football is a big sport in my family. My children play football. But to be honest with you, my children play apartheid football. What I mean by that is, where I live, 5 minutes from my house, there's a club. Formerly white club, but it's not a white club anymore. It's a mixed club now, but it's a formerly white club. The club plays football against only the white clubs that they used to play against in apartheid.
Yeah.
And so if I can give you some demographic, I'm sure you know a little bit about Cape Town. I live in the southern suburbs. The club is 5 minutes away, but we have to go and play in Camps Bay, and then we have to go and play in Fishook, and then we have to go and play in Somerset West, because those are white clubs. When they are non-white clubs in a colored township or in a black township, 5 minutes away, 10 minutes away, down the road, but we can't play against them because, let's face it, this country, you haven't integrated. We play sport in PE where I come from. People still play league sport on a Saturday, club football, in the same leagues as we used to play in apartheid sport. So what have we transformed? We've transformed nothing.
Yeah.
We play in the same leagues. We play against the same people. We haven't integrated society. Society has not been integrated. The coloreds play against the coloreds. The blacks play against the blacks. The whites play against the whites. There's no integration. People don't love or compete against each other on a weekend. Because, listen, those are societal problems. I don't have the answers for that. I'm not into politics, but that's how we still live.
Yeah. That's the biggest indictment. Well, I don't know. Well, I don't know whether you had finished or you were edging to.
I have one more thing that I have to clarify, and this is
Go ahead.
this is something that has been in the media, where again my name was used in the media, and people were saying, you know, Graham Smith appointed me or approached me to include me on the coaching staff with Mark Boucher, etc. And I declined the position as a batting coach on the coaching staff. And I just have to clarify, you know, I have to give my my version of the story, because there's a story going out there. And the reality is, or my version of the story is that, yes, Graham Smith did contact me. He asked me if I wanted to be on the coaching staff. I said to him, okay, what's the coaching staff going to look like? He said, we're changing the head coach, so we're taking Enoch out, so he's going to be replaced by Mark Boucher. You know, I didn't ask any questions about that. You know, I said, okay, you must have your reasons, or I felt you must have your reasons why you're doing that. And then further, he said that, you know, I'm going to get Charles Langeveld, who was with one of the teams, I think he might have been with Bangladesh at the time. We're going to recruit him back home. Justin Ontong was already on the fielding side of things. And then Jacques Callis, he said, was going to be the batting coach. So in the national team, some of us refer to Callis as the king, King Callis. Obviously, cricket fans around the country refer to him as the king. In my mind, I was like, Graham, you know, if the king is going to be the batting coach, and I said, I didn't say the king, I said, if Callis is going to be the batting coach, then what am I going to do on the coaching staff? What is my position? Because I'm a batsman. I've only ever been a batsman. I think I was a reasonable fielder, so maybe I could be the fielding coach, but that position was already occupied. So it's like, what's my position going to be? If Callis is going to be there, he will be the batting coach. Langeveld and Ontong will do bowling and fielding. You know, what's my position? He didn't have a position for me. And I'm sure he said to me, let's see where we can fit you in, or whatever the case may be. And I just said to him, look, if you don't have a position for me, don't call me. If you have a certain amount of black or non-white faces or whatever you need on your coaching staff, don't call me if that's your reason. Don't call me. You're calling the wrong person. Because I think, you know, if there's one thing that he should have known about me, having been my captain for X amount of years, is that, you know, you got to treat me with respect. When you're going to put me in a position, put me in a position. Don't just put me, or don't just think that I'm going to be happy sitting on a balcony. I'm part of the Proteas coaching staff. Actually, I don't have a role to play here, but I'm here. You know, look at me, I'm here. So, you know, I think this is the thing that he didn't understand. All we want is to be treated with respect. The value that we bring, we want it to be appreciated. You know, don't think because you're just a colored, I can just put you there and you'll be happy to earn a few rands or whatever the case may be, and, you know, be happy with that. In the end, I declined the position on the coaching staff. He said, okay, where can we fit you in? Do you want to do the South African A team? I said, I'll do that. I think I can make a difference there. I will take the South African A team. The South African A team is the team just below the national team. I did that for one game. Then he phoned me after 2 months and said, the South African A team position is now going to be re-advertised. You have to apply for it. At the time, I had a full-time position with the Cobras, and I said, you know what, the schedule for the South African A team is part-time. I'm not sure I want to give up my full-time job to take that job. So actually, I'm not going to apply for the position. But furthermore, the main reason I didn't apply for the South African A team position is because Graham Smith had appointed Mark Boucher as the national team head coach. And there was uproar in the country because people felt that Boucher didn't have the required level, so level 4, 3 or 4, whatever is required for international team, plus X amount of years of experience, 10 years. When these adverts come out, they put out 10 years of experience, etc. So there was uproar about that. So here's a guy, he just appointed Boucher, and now he's asking me to apply for the SA team job. And the requirement again for the SA team job is level 4 plus 10 years experience. So I didn't have that. And I just thought, I'm not going to apply because I'm going to waste my time anyway. I don't have the qualification. Besides, he's not going to do the same thing again. He's not going to appoint another person who doesn't have the qualification, especially after the uproar with the Boucher appointment. So I just said I'm not applying. So the applications came in for this post for the South African A team. And one person applied, that is obviously an experienced cricketer in the country. Again, I don't want to mention names. There are people in South African media that know this story. They are sitting on it and they won't write it. The media, in all the things that I spoke today, the media is complicit in a lot of these things because they drive certain narratives in this country. Nonetheless, South African A-side A-team applications comes in, and one of the former players applies for the position. It's in my affidavit, you got it there. And I know for a fact that he doesn't have 10 years experience because he retired after me. He became a coach after me. He doesn't have the level 3 or level 4 requirements for the position because he hadn't been on the courses. So now I'm sitting and I'm doing a calculation and I'm saying, okay, this guy doesn't qualify. He should be spat out by the system, by Smith or whoever is going to make this appointment. His application should be spat out. In the end, the person ends up in a different position that was never advertised. The new position as the batting coaching lead in the country. Leading coaching position for batting. The person now occupies that position. Now, what I want to say is, had that position be advertised, you don't need 10 years experience, you don't need a level 4 for that. There's myself and probably a dozen other people, black, white, Indian, colored, whoever you want, that could have applied for that position. And the person was instated into that position. And that position was never advertised. So this is in my last paragraph in my submission that I forwarded. So the question that I have is, why are these things allowed? Why is it always allowed? Why are these types of gaps allowed in the system? When, you know, who's allowing it? So there's a position, like I say, at least 12 of us, half a dozen or a dozen people could have applied for the position.
If we are, you know,
yeah, anyway.
Why does Cricket South Africa allow it? Shouldn't that be the question?
Yes, that's the question.
We'll ask them.
The final point is, every person that has been on here before and has cried foul about national team selection. The biggest problems in the national team is team selection. And where we have to understand how cricket is different from maybe a sport like rugby. In rugby you have 15 people to start. Then you have about 6 or 7 subs. I don't know how many subs they allowed. I'm not a follower of rugby. You have 6 or 7 subs. In a game, you can have 22, 23 people that can impact the game. You know, there might be a certain composition of the team starting, and then other people can come on and make an impact in the game. The following game, they can start because they made a great impact in the game. Cricket is different. Cricket have 11 people that start the match. You can't come on and have an impact on the match because you're not allowed to bat or bowl. So in selection, there has always been problems, always in Cricket South Africa. So I'm thinking of resolutions. I'm thinking about how we can get past, not just to get to the point where, we're now satisfied with the team that's been selected. The problem has always been that people have been able to point you in different directions. Go and seek an answer there, go and seek an answer. It's not me who has the final call. It's not the convener of selectors. It's not the coach. It's not the captain. We all know that they all have varying levels of influence on the final selection in the team. What I'm trying to say is, from today, is it possible where Cricket South Africa can say, right, from now on, every team that goes onto the field is selected by one person. One person. So generally what happens is, if you're going to go to a World Cup, there's a squad. If you're going to play a series, there's a squad of 15 or 16. It's bigger squads now because of COVID, and you need certain more replacements. But when that team goes on the field, to eliminate any confusion about who selected that team, because people will point to Linda Zondi and people will point to Victor Mpatsang. Meantime, we all know that some people have more influence than others in terms of who's going onto that pitch. So if you want to have that amount of authority, you've got to take the responsibility that comes with it. What I'm trying to say is, Mark Boucher is the coach of our team. Let Mark Boucher decide who goes onto the field. If that team then loses, it's his responsibility. If that team doesn't meet any selection criteria, there's one person who gives answer to that. Not potentially that person, or potentially the coach, or potentially the convener of selectors, or the captain. Let it be certain, categorically, 100%. This team that's going onto the field, that is Mark Boucher's selection. If anybody player want to know why he's not playing, the coach gives the answer. If there's a transformation thing that hasn't been met, the coach gives the answer, because he selected the team. And he needs to give the answer.
Then what would the role of the convener of selectors be?
So the convener of selectors, because the national team coach is not able to watch cricket regularly, he's not able to watch the players below the national team because he's on national duty. The convener of selectors and the rest of the panel, they watch the other cricketers who plays in the first class system. They will be able to communicate with the coach. These players are shining. They should be considered for national selection. They then select a squad of 15, 16, 17. But ultimately, that 11 that walks onto the field, one person needs to be responsible for that. There cannot be uncertainty about who selected that team.
Like it is,
because
is it in soccer? That seems to be the position. Even in rugby, you hear people say, in soccer, this is the head coach.
Absolutely.
And the buck stops with him. If somebody is going to be fired because Bafana have not won, then it's going to be that person at the top.
Absolutely.
That you could have some deputy and what have you, but there is one person who is going to be held accountable. Not this, as I understand your evidence. It should not be 101 people from whom we should seek to find who is accountable now that we have got this kind of team that has gone onto the field. Somebody must accept accountability.
Absolutely.
In the current setup, do you feel that at times, the captain and the coach would wield more power than the convener of selectors?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's always been the case.
Some people testified about the big five, and I'm not. I don't recall now whether the big five were certain personalities or were people holding certain positions. But
I think it was more. It was more a group of players that held certain amount of power. I mean, there's so many people that that made mention of that. I don't think you need me to confirm whether it was there or whether it wasn't there. There's more than enough people who mentioned this. Everybody can't be lying.
Yeah.
Right.
Mr. Prince, there's something that I want you to, I'm not sure if it's in the, because I haven't seen the latest statement. The issue about SACA and CSA. Are you in a position to talk about that? You were at one stage a president of SACA.
Yeah,
That
I was not for I wasn't president. I wasn't the president for a very long time.
Okay.
But what I have seen and experienced in my time is that I don't know where to begin. I think Cricket South Africa is responsible for relinquishing a lot of power within the game to SACA. There's this MOU that needs to be signed. MOU, MOI, there are certain clauses. I'm not aware of all the clauses, so I'm not going to speak about clauses that I'm not 100% sure of. But, excuse me, one point that I want to make is that, for instance, my view of a players' union or players' association is that they are there to represent you. If there's any disputes with your employer, over time, for instance, I'm going to talk at the level where I work, player contracts is now drawn up by SACA. So a player's contract with the union is not drawn up by the union. My understanding also is that a player that is contracted to Cricket South Africa is not drawn up by Cricket South Africa. It's drawn up by the union that represents the players. So, I mean, can that be right? Is that right? How can if my view is that I have a contract with Cricket South Africa, okay? And if I'm not schooled in understanding clauses in a contract, I then take it to a lawyer, a cricket association, a players association, which might be SACA. If I want any clauses disputed, I go to them. They can be my representative, and I can dispute the clause. But should they be drawing up the contracts for players that represent Cricket South Africa? I don't think that can be right. Maybe it is. I'm not schooled in sports law, but I think Cricket South Africa should draw up their contracts with their players. That's what I think, and Western Province should draw up its contract with its players. And if any player has a dispute about any clause, they're welcome to take that to SACA. And SACA can dispute the clauses in the contract. That's fair play, I think. But I mean, like I say, I don't know about all the clauses. There's also clauses in there that have made SACA a very wealthy organization, I believe. I don't want to quote any figures or things that I've heard, but I've heard that they are a very wealthy organization. We always in the national team, I mean, contracting. Once I was when I was playing for the national team, we had categories. I don't know what formula they use these days. I was a category because I was deemed as a person who was playing at that level. We had A+, then we had A, then we had B, then we had C. So I was on an A category. Some people somewhere had some meetings, and at the end of that season, because they felt I didn't have a great season, I was now on a B+. B+ didn't exist at all, but now some people felt that I needed to be relegated to a B+. Up till today, I don't know who that people were. There might have been some other people that was on A+ that in my opinion might have had to drop down a category, but they never dropped down. So there are, like I say, there are contracting issues. There are how, for instance, ICC pays funds to a union, to an affiliate, for what they call commercial rights. So if you're going to play in an ICC tournament, they pay monies over to your union because they believe your team is ranked number 1, 2, 3 in the world, and therefore that equates to X amount of millions. How that is distributed, I don't know. Whether CSA knows how that is distributed, I don't know if they know how that is distributed. But these are the types of things that I'm referring to when I say, does CSA really know what is going on at ground level sometimes? For me, I feel that they have lost a lot of control of cricket. That's what I feel.
My last question on this soccer thing. You were a president, but you are saying in your affidavit, please, Ombuds, can you check this issue about soccer management PTY, in particular the issue of the board? So as the president, you don't sit in the board of soccer.
I can't remember how long I was the president. I think it was about 2 months before I resigned after that incident. And I might have appeared in one board meeting. It wouldn't have taken more than 5 or 10 minutes. It wasn't a very long meeting. At this point in time, I can't remember what would have been on the agenda at that particular meeting. So yeah, I think I attended one meeting.
Let me just consult with my... Well, as we close, I'm just reminded of the fact that perhaps we should ask you what are your final comments What are your final comments? Or what questions do you have for us, if any? Not that I think it is for us to to be asked questions, but you can put them. But it would be useful if you gave us your parting shot. You say, look, this is where I would like to see this process getting to in order for it to be effective.
My parting shot is that, well, my final comment, I should say, is that I hope that at the end of this process, we will arrive at a game, at a sport that is more inclusive of everyone. I hope that we will arrive at a point where we have equality. Everybody is treated equally. And in saying that, and in the little bit of schooling that I've tried to school myself with in some subjects that interest me, what I've read in, about massive organizations of this size is that at times you have to make the difficult right decisions versus the easy wrong decisions. At times, that's what you have to do, because things might be a little bit messy, and I don't think I'm up for all that mess. I just allow things to stay the same. So I don't make the difficult right decision, I make the easy wrong decision. I'm hoping that CSA are going to spend some time listening to all the submissions that have been made, and that we can arrive at a better game for everybody. Thank you very much to yourself, Advocate, and the panel for allowing me. As I said at the start, I was inspired by my former teammates, and I'm hoping that some of my contributions will be able to assist in CSA being a better organization. Thank you very much.
Yeah, on that hopeful note, I'm the one who must thank you for having thought out the views that you hold and having the conviction to come and state them, and where they are different from the views of other people. Like, for instance, the debate that you had with one of the persons who has participated in this process, Advocate Dumisa, you have been able to engage him in a spirit of seeking to find a solution, but in a spirit also of saying, that may well be your view, but this is my view, and these are the reasons for my view. We are not at war with each other. In fact, there are some ways in which we would be complementary of each other, because we have identified the same problem, and we have identified the need for that problem to be resolved. It is just, it's unfortunate that the decision to try and find some sanity in all of this lies with the office of the ombudsperson. And we would only hope that we won't betray the trust that you have, in the process. And we will do our best to take into account all the submissions that have been made and that will be made. At the end, we need a cricket that is going to be owned by all South Africans. If it doesn't happen in our lifetime, let us rest assured that it will happen for our children. And on that note, thank you very much. You have been very, very helpful, Mr. Prince.
Thank you very much, Advocate, and thank you to the Office of the Ombudsman. I really am grateful that I could share my experience.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We will adjourn.